Hello, hello, and good morning, and welcome everyone to the hard part of accessibility tips and tricks for making fully accessible PDFs. Today, I'm joined by Melissa Oakes, our client extraordinaire, who actually was so helpful on the last webinar about accessibility. We invited her to co-present today, joining us from Denver. Please welcome Melissa Oakes. Now, before we get started, I'd love to hear from you. We have over 300 people registered and joining us today. Please introduce yourself in chat, your district, and where you're dialing in from today, and joining this conversation on the hard part of accessibility. Now, a little bit of a funny story. We originally gave our first version of this talk, it was a little more than a month ago, I think, right? Annalise and Alex, we gave this and we called it the journey out of PDF hell. But unfortunately, it was so complicated that it turned out to be kind of the journey through PDF hell. So we have completely restructured the presentation to make something that's hard approachable, because we want to empower you as a district. We want you to leave really clearer on how you approach a problem like this. And this is, of course, just has been a big question mark. And thanks to people like Melissa, who have literally addressed hundreds of PDF documents. Melissa, you manage over 100 special district websites, right? You and your team at Spencer Fane?
Yeah, we do. I think we're up to like maybe 120, 125 with you right now.
It's amazing. And she's worked with us for 2 years, and their law firm, Spencer Fane, specializes in the municipal space. And they work with a bunch of districts, many metropolitan districts in Colorado. But really, the principles that she's applying for her districts apply across the United States. And as we look, we've got people from all over the country. California, we got the hello from Kim in Florida right off the bat. It is really, really exciting to see all of that. And so anyway, we're going to dive in today. We've got an exciting agenda. It's going to be an action-packed hour. And we're going to begin by talking about why it matters at a high level, because we always want to talk about the why. Before we get into the what of the details of this technology, got to think about, the importance of accessibility at a high level. Also, we're going to look at the legal foundations and the reminders. We've actually updated these slides because there's been so much happening between the Department of Justice ruling and some state-specific laws that have come into effect since we last presented. And we're then going to get into two kinds of document remediation. The DIY, the do-it-yourself. You want to roll up your sleeves and fix your PDFs, you can. And if you want to just have someone else do it for you, we'll teach you the ins and outs of that technique as well. Then for all of our customers on the call, I think we've got about 120 customers with us today. We're going to show you your new dashboard and the technologies that you'll be able to use to tackle this problem to make life easier. If you're in Colorado, due to the passage of HB 211110, we've already turned that on for you. But if you're outside of Colorado, unless you're part of our beta program, this will all be new and you'll get to see some exciting improvements. If you're not a Streamline customer, feel free to stay on for that portion if you want to peek under the hood and get some strategies on how to solve the problem and see the technology in action. Everybody is welcome today, and we're excited to get started. With that, Melissa, your firm took a stance early on that accessibility was really important. Tell us, why does PDF accessibility matter?
Right. Well, I think it matters for a lot of reasons. Here in Colorado, and I see that we've got people from all over the country, so this is great. So some of the stuff I'm going to say is going to be unique to Colorado, but I think it can also be applied, in other states. But first and foremost, inclusivity, right? You want to make sure that everyone, regardless of where they are in life, can access the information about your district, about what's going on. Some of this stuff is required in a compliance situation, whether it's by statute or by federal law or DOJ. In Colorado, we do have some statutes and rules that we are having to comply with. which also kind of loops into transparency, right? Some of the things that we have to provide on the website are required materials, but then there are other materials that, you know, you may want to provide to the citizens or the residents that are living in your district. So you want to be able to give all of that information to people in the format that they need to be able to read and absorb and digest that information. Also, as I understand it, it helps to improve your user experience. It makes your website more searchable. Matt can talk a little bit more about that. That's kind of techie for me, but then also, last but not least, you know, you want to be out there saying we are doing everything we possibly can to make sure that everyone in our neighborhoods, in our districts, are included and can engage with our districts and with the information that they're looking for.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, so many reasons across the board, technical and non. Now, Melissa mentioned laws, and this is obviously a very important thing to consider. We used to talk about web accessibility way back in the early days, you know, 2015, when we launched our first special district website. And, you know, it was all about the good and the positive reasons, the carrot, if you will. But now it's about the stick because more and more laws have come out requiring this. But I wanted to break it down for a minute to think about all the laws that require accessibility. So just as a building has to have a wheelchair ramp, basically your website and your PDF files have to have these kind of accommodations for people that might have a disability. Maybe they're blind, maybe they are deaf, maybe there's an intellectual disability or a motor disability. Maybe they can't hold or move a mouse. They need to be able to access this content. And so what's great is that there are a lot of laws now supporting this and formalizing this. So this is new. If you've seen our pyramid before, the pyramid now has a fifth layer to it because of the DOJ. So at the foundation, you have the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was passed in 1990, that requires an equal experience for all. And that's the foundation of this whole pyramid. Then you have what was just released 2 months ago, not even 2 months ago, from the Department of Justice, saying that every special district in the United States must comply by a deadline with full compliance. And that included not just the websites as it has before, but PDFs. So in a way, like ADA compliance is already the law of the land, but these new specific guidelines extend that not only to the websites, but to the PDFs and all of these different components. So this is serious, and they even explained that there will be enforcement. So this is really something that we're paying attention to, and that's what's driving a lot of interest. On top of that, you have Section 508 of the U.S. Rehabilitation Act, and that explains and kind of translates how equal access applies to state and local government and applies to electronic media. You then have state laws, like what Melissa's firm has been dealing with in Colorado, or what we saw with AB 434 in California in 2019. So your state laws can put like extra teeth or extra requirements into it that go beyond federal statute. And then all of this, if you take away, you know, this big spaghetti of different laws, there's really one thing that is important, and that is the WCAG 2.1 AA standards. And what those are, other than having a terrible long name, is that they are universal technical standards that we can actually measure your website and your PDFs against. And that is the gold standard. So if you meet the WCAG standards, you automatically meet all of the other laws, which is so nice. They did not used to line up, and it was very difficult to measure it, but now it is. It is a gold universal standard that applies across the board. And so if anything, these are the standards you can look to and know that you're being compliant with the rest. Now, when it comes to PDFs, it's a little bit dicier because it's not just a matter of every PDF being WCAG compliant, which would be a lot of work. And so there's a little bit of a rubric that we can use to figure out what actually needs to be made accessible and what does not. In other words, if you had a bunch of buildings on a campus, you could say, okay, these are the buildings we need to build wheelchair ramps for. The rest we don't need to worry about. And so that's a very fortunate thing that came out of the DOJ ruling, is it resolved the ambiguity around what needed to be fixed. So there's three things that we want to look at. One, was the content created after the deadline for its enforcement? So that's anything created after July 1st, 2024 in Colorado needs to be certainly remediated. In other states, the deadlines are later. Now, we do recommend not waiting until the DOJ deadline, because there's still a chance that anybody who doesn't have an equitable experience on your site can file an ADA action against your district. And we see this all the time without any state or federal laws other than the ADA in place. But these are the stated statutory deadlines where everything needs to be up to code. So don't wait. But first, you can look at that and knowing if it was created after the deadline, it for sure needs to be remediated. Then the second one is it a state required document for this year? So maybe you have a budget from the previous year, but if it's still active, if it's a required doc that people will be referencing throughout the year, you definitely want to remediate it. And then lastly, if it's considered an archived document and we linked to the criteria there and we can explain it, I also included in the appendix in the slide. There's a couple of examples of things that are just considered archived documents that do not need any kind of special remediation. So that's nice. You can go through the product and just mark like, hey, this is not something that needs to be fixed. So what you'll be left with is a pile of documents that, but hopefully not an insurmountable pile of documents that would need to be made accessible. So Melissa, like, you've literally had to deal with hundreds of these documents across your firm. Like, how do you think about prioritizing documents and figuring out what to fix and what to leave alone?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, your meeting agendas should be the first thing that you're looking at, because a lot of districts are meeting on a regular basis, whether it's a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. So you want to make sure that those meeting agendas are up to the requirements that are remediated. Now, past meeting agendas, if you still have them on your website, is something you can think about possibly archiving. If they're not necessary, then I don't think they would need to remain, but obviously anything going forward would need to be remediated and accessible upon posting. And then meeting minutes. If your district is a district that is required to or voluntarily provides meeting minutes, that would probably be something else that I would tackle sooner rather than later. Again, think about what really needs to be up there. Do you really need to have meeting minutes up there from 3 or 4 years ago? If that's what your board wants or your district wants, then that's fine. But you will have to think about either remediating those or archiving those to make those compliant with what we need to be doing. Here in Colorado, we do have statutes and rules that require specific financial documents be posted on the district websites. So that would be the next thing. Those, are usually annual reports or documents. So as we're getting into budget season, audit season, annual report season here in Colorado, you need to think about what are you going to be doing with those new documents, obviously, that are created and are going to be posted after the July 1 deadline. Any public notices and announcements. These, of course, in Colorado aren't necessarily required by statute, but if you want to be providing information to your residents about what's going on, you need to make sure that those are remediated or perhaps create a web page instead of a PDF document. That's another option. And then any frequently used forms. If you have forms on your website that people are filling out, maybe for, I don't know, planting a tree or some deviation from, HOA or requirements or something like that. Those are also things that you need to think about making sure that they are provided in an ADA accessible format.
Yes. And Melissa, you said something really important there that I want to call out to everybody on this webinar, is that if you have the information in an alternative format that is accessible, such as on your webpage, like let's say there's a public notice that a meeting was changed and it was a PDF. Well, you can just put that announcement, the body text of that announcement on a web page, and then have the PDF attachment for reference. But then because an accessible alternative version has been made available, you do not need to remediate the PDF. And that is like sometimes the easiest way around it is to not have to fix the PDF in the first place. Because PDF accessibility is not always easy and fun. So if you can just avoid that requirement altogether, it's a great workaround. Okay, now we're getting some questions. So another thing too, I welcome you to use the question and answer tool. And Alex and Annalise will help us manage those questions and we'll float them up to the top. And so we're getting some really good questions in chat there as well. And yes, this presentation will be made available after the webinar, both the slides and the recording for reference. So now there's two ways to go about remediation. And before I jump into that, actually, I'll grab a couple of questions that are coming in. So as for the archived notice, like saying that, hey, this is an archived document, is it required to be put on each document? You know, I believe that's a gray area, but our attorneys recommended that it's on each and every file. Now, we're not going and editing each web page to do that. It's automatic through Streamline. It has an accessibility notice that Melissa's team has actually provided some feedback on as well, so it's constantly improving. But it notifies them before they download the file that it might not be accessible. And they can choose to download it or request remediation. And that seemed to fix that piece.
Can I just jump in there for a second too?
Absolutely.
What we've done, because we do have some of our districts that are on they have decided not to transfer over to Streamline. So we have about, I don't know, 6 or 7 that we're managing on a state hosted website. What we did in that situation for documents that we are archiving, and of course, archiving is kind of like that stopgap right now, right? It's the stuff that was up there before July 1, but as new stuff comes on board, you're going to be replacing it with the remediated stuff. So the archiving, you know, will probably be less and less and not needed. It's kind of like this in between that we have. But on those websites that aren't on Streamline, what we did is we created a separate tab and put those archived documents under that tab, and then we put some language specific saying these, you know, whatever legal ease we use there, but basically saying that, you know, these documents have been archived to comply with, you know, whatever. If you require an accessible version, please contact us, and then we provide an email address to contact. So that's kind of how we got around it. Rather than tagging something onto each document, we just created a separate tab or separate page, put some language up there, and then put those documents under that.
Yeah, and that's one of the ways that the DOJ defines an archive, is that it needs to be in a conspicuous separated section. We kind of worked around that by having the notice appear on every document, because sometimes those documents are in the archive, but it's really helpful to also like reference them from the pages where the topic is relevant. So how we did that is just saying, it's kind of a notice saying, hey, you're going to get something out of the archive. It might not be accessible. And we'll demonstrate all of that today. And if you're not on Streamline, please feel free to grab any of that language that you would find useful and incorporate it into your own website. I think there's a lot that's been figured out in this process collaboratively, thanks to power users like Melissa and the other law firms we work with, as well as advice from our own counsel, Stuart Tubis, who's really a leading voice on ADA compliance across the country. So we're really grateful for all that, and we'll show some examples. And so Jane, to kind of answer your question there, yeah, if you have a large number of technical documents, I think just label it archive and make sure that those documents are in that section. Betty was asking, are Streamline forms accessible? And Jasmine asked the same thing. They are. Yes, the web forms that are provided are absolutely accessible, and they're tested every year by users with disabilities. All right. Are intranets also covered by these requirements? Yes, they technically are under the DOJ, and they are not actively being enforced and checked right now, but that's something, as that deadline approaches in 2027, you want to make a plan for to make sure you have an accessible intranet. Ashley's asking how do we determine how far back to keep records on our website? Yeah, you know, your department has all agendas and meeting minutes back to 2020. So there's different schools of thought on that. I know Melissa has taken a more conservative approach to not put up more than is necessary. We have other customers that want to, they have agendas back to 2005, some people. And I think it's wonderful to have that level of transparency, but it's great to use the archiving tools and stuff to remind people that old agendas are not, necessarily compliant, but in the interest of transparency, they're putting it out there. And the reason for this, like, I'm so glad to see the DOJ did this, because for those of you who watched our presentation a year ago, what happened is that these accessibility requirements came out. What happened in California is there's like the digital equivalent of a book burning. Like the California Department of Fire just like got rid of all their fire maps, all their stuff. It's like they wiped out 80% of the content on their site. Some stuff that was pretty useful, but not absolutely statutorily required. And they just wiped it all out. And so that everyone looked at that and they said, well, was that the intention of this? Well, if it can't all be accessible, then we'll just get rid of all of it. It's like, that wasn't what we wanted. So I appreciate that they have kind of moderated the approach so people can at least know what they're missing and have a way to get to it. All right, with that, lots of excellent questions. And yes, and Lynn will show some examples too. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk about the two ways to address the PDFs. The first category is doing it yourself, and the second category is automated. And by automated, our platform has a solution for this, but there's other, like if you're working with third parties, the same principles apply. So first, when you look at manually remediating PDFs, there's a big gotcha. And the big gotcha is that Adobe Acrobat does not, like you can check in Adobe Acrobat for accessibility and it gives you a green light and you're like, hooray, I'm accessible. Except you aren't, because Adobe Acrobat doesn't currently, its product does not align with the WCAG standards. It aligns to Adobe's own standards, which is great, but it's not the law. And so there's another like 5%-ish that needs to be done to make sure it's fully compliant. So one company that's out there, kind of the most popular leader, is Common Look, part of Alliant. And so they have their own free kind of checking tool you can download. I think they have a paid tool as well. And they will check some of these other little gotcha areas, which they articulate very well on their own website to truly make sure it is WCAG compliant. And so Melissa's going to speak to like kind of what are some of these things that you have to do on a PDF, like specifically to make it compliant.
Right. So, and this gets a little techie, and I will start out by saying that conceptually, I understand how to fix things in Adobe Acrobat, but applying that has proved to be very challenging. So if it's a very simple document, I can move some things around and retag things. But if it's a more complex document with charts and tables and created by a third party or a scanned document, that's not something that I necessarily tackle. We kind of send those off to the professionals to deal with that. So,
And that was a mistake we made, Melissa, in our first presentation.
right?
We're like, you want to know how to make a PDF accessible? And we like went through all of these things. We had Sean Jordison, kind of like a leader in like literally the accessibility guy, like jump on and he was like, okay, let's take this broken agenda that somebody sent in and I'll show you how to fix it. And he like went right into the technical details, and people's eyes, I mean, I couldn't see them over Zoom webinar, but like they were glazing over, people were fainting in their desks, just being like, this is so awful. I don't even understand the half of this. So we agreed in today's talk to not get into all the nitty gritty of like what these are, but to explain them to you conceptually. And then that's why we brought Melissa here, who's not a computer scientist, but he's got to figure out how to get it done to give you the pragmatic view of like, are there quick little things you can fix and do it yourself? And when does it get too complicated?
Right. And so speaking of the things that are quick and easy to fix, alt text for images, but also alt text for hyperlinks. Those are pretty easy to fix in Adobe. I mean, Adobe has an accessibility checker, so you run it through that and it'll spit out for you, the things that actually need to be addressed and fixed. And so alt text for images, alt text for hyperlinks, color contrast, those sorts of things are pretty easy. When you start getting into fillable forms, tables, reading orders, and tagging, those get a little complex. I mean, it's not that you can't learn it. It just takes a little bit more patience and time. And for us, you know, on some of these third-party documents that we're getting, we would spend hours trying to fix this, and it's just not worth the client's money to have someone, you know, not really that great trying to fix their document rather than sending it off to be, you know, professionally addressed. So that's kind of how we decide what we're going to do. Is it going to take us too long to fix what needs to be fixed, either, you know, a tag or a reading order? If it does, then we'll probably send it off. But these are things, and I know that Mac, I think, has some information about some resources that can walk you through these things. But these are like the main ones that you would probably be addressing on any particular document you're trying to remediate in Adobe.
Yep. So for the 20% of you on this call that are really tech savvy, that you're like, hey, I came here to understand how to split the list order tag and fix the reading order thing because I'm a power user, more power to you. And we do have that for you. So we actually commissioned Sean Jordison, the accessibility guy, to take you from start to finish with the new accessibility dashboard. And so for those DIY of you who are not enough in a majority to go through the nitty gritty, although we'll do that again, the only problem is we had other people join that call and their heads exploded all over their screen when he went into the technical details. But what we found, and this is pretty helpful, is that we commissioned Sean to make 2 videos. One is how to make an accessible agenda that passes. Because basically in Streamline now with the new dashboard, if you upload any file, it's going to tell you if there's an issue. And it's going to scan all your files on the site, every single one, and it's going to check them against the standards. And we're going to actually demonstrate this to you. So like what it looks like. And then we have Sean walk you from starting in Word and getting it all the way over to passing the common look scanner inside of Streamline. And he walks you through a basic example for an agenda. And then he gives you a complex tabular multi-section thing, and he walks through all the gotchas that pop up, all the things you need to correct in Acrobat, things you need to fix in Common Look, the edits. It's really cool. So I'm actually going to give you a glimpse of what that video looks like right now. I'm just going to play the first 30 seconds of it, and you'll understand these. These are both linked, and they will walk you through the nitty gritty. And the awesome part is once you do those and you get them up, then you'll understand what the error codes are that pop up, and you'll understand how to fix a large majority of it. We'll also host, for more complex questions, we have Sean available to us and to you and to other workshops, and you can bring your like PDF problems and he can walk you through any of those things to fix. So if there's interest, let us know and we'll happily host that again too.
In today's video, we're going to learn how to make an agenda accessible to WCAG 2.1 AA standards. Then we're going to upload it into Streamline and run a scan for accessibility to validate that it is in fact accessible. Welcome to the Accessibility Guide channel. My name is Sean Jordison, and let's jump right in. There are many rules and regulations to consider when making Microsoft Word and PDF documents accessible to WCAG 2.1 AA compliance. And I always like to begin with applying headings. Now, the first thing I want to do is open up what's called the navigation window. There's a couple of different ways to do this. We can press Control F on my keyboard and then select the headings button from the navigation panel. Or we can type in the search bar, navigation, and select open the navigation pane. Now, let's begin applying our heading structure. The first and most important heading to apply is the heading level 1. So under my home ribbon,
so you'll see here, like Sean goes all the way into building out an agenda piece by piece by piece. And I recognize this is a little bit small, but then he even talks to like, what do you do when you export it from Word?
And advanced properties. And let's add in a title. I'm going to say sample agenda, and the subject will be agenda, and the author is Sean Jordison. And
so he's done this just for a special district, just for an agenda example. And then he'll even go through into Acrobat.
Head and check our document properties. I'm going to select the menu button and then select document properties. And in here we have our title, author, agenda. Now there's one thing I want to check in here. Under initial view, under the window options, I want to make sure that I have document title selected and not file name.
I mean, it's so nitty gritty, all the damn things you have to do to make a PDF compliant. And he walks you through all of it. And what's great is the first one's a 10-minute video and the second one's a roughly 20-minute video. And in a half an hour, you can get it. And what I like to do is like watch that. And Melissa, because you helped us, we redid this video like 10 times and kept cutting it. And Melissa's like, nope, I'm still getting the error. And so we went back and forth and back and forth. And when Melissa and her team were able to make compliant PDFs, then we're like, okay, this is good to publish. Poor Sean had to do like multiple retakes and everything. We nitpicked the heck out of it. But
right. And we were able to take this video and follow it step by step and actually create, an accessible agenda from Word to Adobe and into Streamline. And these are, simple documents. More complex documents. I know that he has his own YouTube channel, so I know that there is information available out there on how to do tons of different things. If you want to really get in the weeds or are looking for some specific tools or tips on how to create specific things, I know that's available on there, and Mac may have some other agreements with him to maybe create some more content. I don't know.
Yep, absolutely. And so you think you want a webinar on this, but you don't. You want a self-guided YouTube video.
No, you don't.
You can take 2 hours and a giant cup of coffee and work through your agenda and cuss at it all in the privacy of your own home or office and work through it and get to the green light. And we'll show you that, and we'll give you any other content that you want for this piece as well. But we found this actually solves 99% of the customer questions that they had. And it's pretty cool. We also have the Alliance self-paced training, which you can use as well. And so this is all linked. We'll be sending these slides to you, and these link directly to those videos, and you can dive in. And we have tried this ourselves, and it's pretty cool. And what I found is this solves 99% of the use cases. The other thing that's really cool is the automated remediation. So for those of you on Streamline, like we have figured out how to solve this problem at scale, because what we found is that people, once we installed the PDF checking, so we got a license to use basically the gold standard scanner, which is common look, and we plugged it directly into Streamline to just sift through and check all your files for you and then give you the reports. But then that created a crisis because 90% of the PDFs have some problem. So then we needed to figure out what to do about all the panicked customers that are like, well, now what do I do? So we created an agreement with Alliant, and we said, look, we'll send you all this work directly through Streamline. Like, can you cut us a deal? And their normal process is they have to quote it and then get back to you, and then they have to agree, and there's a call and all this stuff. And it's just like, that's not going to work for the number. We literally have thousands of customers. Like, that isn't going to work. And so we worked really hard with them, and we've been building this tool for the last 2 years. And so you can now actually go in and submit PDFs for remediation directly in Streamline, and then they come right back to your site with a certificate and they install themselves. And so we can speak to that. Melissa actually has a little site that we can pull up and have a look at. And then I want to answer all these great questions that are coming through, like how does this display, et cetera, et cetera. We want to take care of all of that now. Before I shift gears, I'm just going to look at the questions that are coming in. Annalise, will you read out some of the top questions and chats that are coming through for Melissa and myself? It's like scrolling so fast.
Yeah, let's see. I think the first question is, how will this apply to PDFs taken from Excel? Are there any resources?
Yes, absolutely. So that's a good one. Sean has a video on his website, Excel to Accessible PDF, that you can reference. And we will look into finding that. If you want to send me an email at the end, I can loop in Sean and we can get you that video to talk you through the process.
Great. The next is from Chris. He said, my understanding is that as of January 2024, the current standard is WCAG 2.2, not 2.1, as mentioned in that video you just played.
Um, I'm sorry, as of what date did he say?
January 2024.
Okay, no, it is still WCAG 2.1 AA. Now the standards have been released, which is great. They released 2.2 standards, which are awesome, and we actually test streamlined to 2.2 standards, but they're not the required enforced version. So even though there's like a new version out, you don't have to meet that to be technically compliant under the DOJ guidelines. They may update that in the future. Like in Colorado, they were flirting with a 2025 deadline for WCAG 2.2, but then they pulled that back and they just said, we're just going to align to the national standards. I think it'll be a while before 2.2 gets adopted. It's only a few small things related to like mobile responsive designs and alternative devices and accessible technology. It's 2.1 is the lion's share of it. If you want to challenge yourselves to go to 2.2, that's great, but there's no like statutory penalty for not doing that.
Great. We have 3 more questions in the Q&A. Do you want to get to those now or?
I'll let you, up to you, Annalise.
Sure, let's go through them. The first is from Pauline. She said, if we have documents that are no longer published, but we are keeping them out there, do we have to make those accessible if they are not published?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, so these are documents maybe that had previously been posted and were public facing on the website, but you've since taken them down, but they're still kind of living in the background, like maybe in the files of your website. If it's not public facing, so if it's not a link that somebody can click on, then you do not need to make those accessible because it's not out in the public, and so nobody's going to be able to look at it. If it is on your website and it's public facing, there's a link to get to it, then it does need to be accessible.
Yeah.
And I see another question about making things accessible by uploading it as a doc. I would never upload a Word document to a website because somebody could very easily take that down and make changes to it. People can make changes to PDFs too, but a Word document is much easier to manipulate. And I don't think that gets you, because your Word doc still has to be accessible by some type of screening software. So I don't think you get around it that way. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, exactly right. And then Alexi asked a really great question. What about photo-heavy PDF flyers? Like when you make infographics and other things, which you should, and InDesign and Canva are lovely. Canva, they are wanting for accessibility features for sure. The best thing with that, Alexi, is just on the page where that's made available, just make sure to write the stats that are captured in it in a paragraph of HTML, or write it into the alt description of that. As long as you can convey the essential information from it, then you've provided a reasonable accommodation and it's no problem. And you don't have to bother with the PDF. Not every PDF has to be accessible. The problems you run into with ADA is not that like there's one error in one PDF, now you're in trouble. Although there's trial attorneys that'll make you feel that way with these mean demand letters that they can send. The real test is like, did a person with a disability, were they unable to have a reasonable, equitable experience? So like, if you post a wildfire evacuation notice as a PDF and it's read to them one letter at a time, like this actually happened in Colorado, somebody shared with us in one of the conferences, they can't evacuate. So then, I don't know if they get caught up in the fire or whatever. It's like a big problem, right? But if you had put on the webpage, evacuate by this date for these areas, evacuation notice in effect, and that was in accessible HTML, it doesn't matter if you also had a PDF that had an inaccessible content that said the same thing, because they already were provided it in an alternative format. So like, you have to really just do the test. Like, is this necessary, or is this just an archived document? And so if you've got infographics and other things, just write out what's in that infographic in a paragraph of text. If you have a map of your district, you don't need to have some expensive remediation done of the map. You can just say the district's boundaries are from this river to this highway to this road in a 10 square area kilometer mile. And that's what a blind person would really want to know about the map, and you're good. So robust alternatives like work really nicely instead of having to fix every single PDF. like that. And that's what I recommend for infographics. I even encourage people to do infographics because they're great for the rest of the public. I just think making sure the information contained within it is somehow relayed. It doesn't have to be relayed in even a pretty way. It just needs to be relayed in an essential way. And then the deadline for compliance in Oregon, the deadline's now for website accessibility itself, but for the PDFs, that would be, I think it's April 24th, 2027 for special districts across the country, if there's not an additional law in Oregon. And currently, right now, there is no supplemental law in Oregon that brings that deadline up sooner. Cool. All right, so want to have a look? Shall we dive in? Melissa, can we dive in and have a look at your sandbox that you, your site that you use for testing?
This is my testing ground. All right, throw everything in to see if it's accessible.
So a couple things we want to show. So for those of you who are familiar, there's an accessibility tab when you sign into Streamline on the left side. But what we've done is like severely overhauled this to, instead of just having two sections, it used to be pages and files. Now it breaks out all the different types of ways that things can go wrong on your site. So you've got an updated and improved page compliance tool, and then the files tool. And I'll get into the other areas as well, because if you care about, compliance in general, they're quick things we want to cover. But what's neat is you can see here all of the uploaded files, and this Streamline will go and find all the files on your site. It'll tell you where it appears. So like on this Cora resolution, it actually tells us what pages it appears on. It appears on this documents page, and also it will perform the tests. So here we have Reagan Ranch. So here's the statement of financial obligations. And it looks like, it was done properly, but there were 3 failures. So Melissa, can you walk us through kind of what this is and how a district would address this?
Yeah, so this particular document has a table in it. So I'm assuming that that is one of the things that that is getting hung up in what's wrong with it. So this is, I mean, in Sean's video, he actually does talk about how to fix tables in a very simple document. So this could be something that you could maybe fix yourself and then re-upload it, or it's 2 pages. So, I mean, we do the calculation of how much do we charge a client per hour or per minute, and does it make more sense for us to send it away for remediation for 2 pages, or does it make sense for us to spend more time trying to fix it? And that's just a decision that needs to be made. There was a question earlier about making templates. And yes, that's one of the things that we have done here at Spencer Fane. So some of these documents that we use on the regular, like agendas and other documents, we have created accessible templates so that our team can just use those templates, put in the information that is unique to that particular client district, and then just go kind of through the steps of taking it from Word to Adobe, where you will have to do a couple of very minor fixes, and then into Streamline. So again, this will, I mean, if Mac clicked on the download scan results link, that actually will provide you with a very detailed, for those techie folks out there, a very detailed explanation of what passed and what failed and where. So if you know how to go back into the document and address those particular things, then you can do that very simply. Again, this is something that I would just make a decision about whether or not it would make sense to fix this ourselves or send it off for remediation.
So if we want to send it off for remediation, so any of the ones that don't pass, and this is tag type of type L, so that's a list. So that has something to do with this nested list, I think. For those techies out there that want to look at this and navigate the tag tree, it'll point you right to the item. And this is the common look global access scan, which is pretty nice. You get it right there. Streamline will give you a summary. It just said, hey, in this case, it's 1 error. So I would really try to fix it myself. But like Melissa says, that clock is running. So she's trying to do the return on investment. And so then you have your how to take action tab. So you can say, you know what? This is not that important. I can archive it. Or first, you can say, you know what? I'm going to remediate it. So Streamline will go ahead and you can share any notes, but you just push an order and off it goes. And it just gets, so this is $7 a page and just gets tacked onto your next monthly invoice. And that's it. And off it goes. And it magically comes back and gets put into your site in 5 to 10 days. And so a professional PDF remediator from Common Look will do it, test it, send it back, and send you a certificate as well, which we keep on file to make sure that, you know, everything's good. The next option is you're like, you know what, this just isn't that important. This is old. So we could click archive. And then what's nice is then we can put this in the vaults and we can say, this is the district's financial obligations and, you know, some information about this, you know, about the financial obligations. So I just will grab a paragraph as an example. So this is nice in the sense that like you're providing a little description for the community. And then, you know, it says provide link to the original file. I'm going to say, yes, let's go ahead and provide link to the original link to the file, save changes. And now I've archived this. So now it's been removed from public view, sort of. We can now go to find it on that page. I think that was on your downloads page originally.
Yeah, I don't think it's public anywhere. But if you click on the document there, it'll give you the pop-up.
Yeah. Okay. So now if we click on it, I think we have to sort of put it somewhere. I could do that. Oh, you know what? I'll do that on.
I don't have much you can play with. Sorry.
Melissa keeps her sandbox so clean.
It's so clean.
Let's put Reagan Ranch on a page just so we can see how that looks, if we don't mind. So I'm going to go ahead on to the documents page. So here's Melissa's document page. And I'm going to grab that file, the financial obligations one. So let's see. Okay, statement of financial obligations. So we're going to go ahead and put this archive document here on the page because I want to show you what it looks like for a user. Because people say, hey, do you have to put those notices? How do you deal with it? So what we do is we place it in there. And then remind me, Melissa, what do I have to do to activate that little pop-up
Did you make
thing?
it? Yeah.
Let's see, compliance. So basically, like what happens in this process is that,
what did you do with that?
let me make sure I put the right one. Okay. So this one, I can, the Reagan Ranch, we review, fix it. And so basically what you have the ability to do is like turn on the, to place it in the vault, you can provide or do not provide provide access to the file, etc. Let me test this one more time. And so anyway, what Streamline will do is it'll like basically remove that content and it'll give it this cool little pop-up that has like a little notice before they go to see it, and it gives them a little statement. And that's pretty neat. Melissa, do you have at the top of your head anybody who's using that we could show?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to 800 Hoyt.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
HOYT. HOYT.
There you go. Yeah, so just like a real world example. This.
Yeah, under documents. And then I think if you click on any of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what it does is it opens the document and then it says about this file. So instead of just giving them the file, it gives them the ability to request a remediated version, or if they just want to get it, they can go ahead and download it anyway. But it stops and gives them an example of that document before just handing it to them. You know what? I think I needed to sign out because
you probably did
still access it.
Yeah.
Anyway, the nice thing is, so this is automatically installed, so just replaces the files with these like stop pages just to put in all the necessary language. And then what's cool is like if somebody requests this, Then Melissa can see on her dashboards how many pending requests have come in for a particular file, and then she can prioritize the ones she wants to fix. She can sort them different ways, and in one spot, she can see how many accessible versus inaccessible files she has that need to be addressed. So if she goes here with this other one, this special meeting template, look, it's not even referenced on any pages. She can go ahead and just say, you know what, on this one, I'm just going to go ahead and archive it. And she could add a description, you know, for what this is. And I'll just type in something for now, save the changes. Okay, and then it's very strict with me. It's not going to let me do anything. Okay, now this one's done. So now she can go up here. Now she's all in compliance. She's either archived them, she's sent them off for remediation, in which case they turn blue while they're being processed and then they come back. But it's pretty neat. You can, in one spot, like be sure that you can wrangle all your files in. And yeah, with that, let's open up for some more questions. Annalise, I see a bunch of questions flying in. So help us wrangle the questions.
All right. Yeah, I would start with the Q&A. Lynn was wondering, what version of Adobe Acrobat do we need?
So yeah, I think the cloud-based version of Adobe Acrobat self-updates. So if you just have Adobe Acrobat, it will automatically update itself. It doesn't have a version number in the same way. Is that how you experience it, Melissa, or do you use a specific version?
We just have Adobe Acrobat Pro that we're using, so.
It's kind of like Chrome. It's just magic. It just keeps itself up to date. If you
Yeah.
have one with a specific, if you have like Adobe Acrobat DC, or you've got like, you know, Adobe Acrobat 9, then it's time to upgrade to the one that's just Adobe Acrobat.
Great. Next one is, how do you fix a PDF document that has a wet signature and upload it as a PDF? Basically
Melissa,
a scanned
hand
PDF.
this one to you, my dear.
Yeah, good question. What you can do is you can provide an unsigned version on your website, and then and specify that it's unsigned, and then if somebody does need an actual signed version of it, I guess you can do one of two things. You can remediate the whole thing, or you could just remediate the signature page, the one page, and then attach that to, you know, your document. I don't know, Mac, did you have anything else that you would
Yeah,
offer
I
on
like that. I mean, I think you always want to post the accessible version, and you could put like, you know, a little /s/ and the board member's name
Yeah.
as a symbol that they did it. And then you can say, you know, wet signature available upon request. We've had people put just the inaccessible signature page at the end, just like under the appendix. It's just a reference, like a scanned copy. We've also seen people just paste in a graphic of the signature into the accessible document and do it that way. And it's just accepted that it was wet signed. So I've seen all of those work. I think there's a number of ways to do that correctly.
Great. The next one is from Steve. Are accessible emails regulated under DOJ ruling? I just realized that we send out hundreds of emails per day with an untagged company logo in their signature. Should we be scanning emails as well?
So that is a great question. That's an area being actively defined. The problem with email standards is they're even worse than PDF documents, due to a long sorted history with Microsoft and Outlook and what formatting they would accept, et cetera, where they sort of broke standards in like 2008, 2009. So it's very hard to actually make accessible emails that open properly in Microsoft Outlook. And because so many people use Microsoft Outlook, they use sort of the inaccessible version. So I know like with Streamline Engage, we made it as accessible as possible. So it alt tags the images, uses all the same frameworks. It limits the amount of design pizzazz that's possible, but they are technically accessible emails to the highest extent possible. And we've tested those with users with disabilities and screen readers and stuff. They're pretty good. Until a standard is defined, I don't know. Technically, they need to be accessible, but there isn't a technical standard that defines it. Like there's not a WCAG 2.1 AA for email that would work. So I don't know, but that will definitely be an emerging area, and we will speak to that as soon as we have information on that. It's a great question.
Wonderful. Next one is from Kelly. Does OCR scanner documents help with the accessibility?
Not really. Those they're a start, but it's if you're scanning stuff in, you're already at a disadvantage when it comes to making things accessible. You might be better off just setting those off for professional remediation. What you want are the original documents wherever possible, so they start with text and they're not scanned in. Because scanned in documents don't designate heading levels properly. They have other issues like that. Sometimes the lines don't end right. So those are the things that get fixed when you can convert right from Word or Google Docs or whatever to Acrobat and then perform the remediation there. So, but if that's all you got, if you just got the scanned version because you were sent by a third party, you may want to just opt for professional remediation for those because they're a lot of work to rebuild. Would you agree with that, Melissa?
Yeah, that's what we end up doing. So, our third party docs are going to be like our budgets, because our accountants are probably using some type of accounting software, maybe QuickBooks or something. While we can make the request that the originator send us a remediated version, that has received some pretty significant pushback, and I just don't think that that's a viable way to think about it. And us being the person who's posting it, on the website, we're ultimately the ones that are responsible. So budgets automatically get remediated. We have some documents that we fill out information on a government website, which you would think would be compliant, but what it spits out, and I'm talking about like audit exemptions, is not. So those have to go be professionally remediated. Some financial statements. I mean, it just depends on the content. Again, if it's a 20-page document that needs a bunch of remediation, we're not going to waste our time and our clients' money doing that. We're just going to send it off to be professionally addressed.
No. The next question is, do we have to set up so that the form is sent to the correct person? You absolutely do not want to mess around with being notified of this. And so Streamline is part of our thing. Like part of this dashboard now includes a remediation service, or not only remediation service, but a indemnification. So we are now like going to defend you because we've seen special districts get hit and we've seen special districts settle to demand letters and all of this stuff. And they'll pay thousands, if not tens of thousands, over issues that come up. And so we decided we're going to really get in the driver's seat on that to protect the districts. So on the settings page of your new accessibility dashboard, it double checks that you've assigned your officer, that you've reviewed your website accessibility policy, which now automatically loads and is built out for you. And we worked with Melissa on this. It's been terrific. And we built our own form that automatically comes into Streamline and to you at the same time. And we have a web accessibility response team that'll jump in. Because here's the thing, like districts have had this where they have a public document request form that follows a process and everything. But we were like, hey, if we're backing districts, in some cases up to $50,000, and they got an accessibility request and they didn't answer it in time and they did all this other stuff, well, then we're paying all the money in court. So what we decided is that we are going to take, because it's basically our butt if there's a problem on any of these websites, we decided we're taking full control of that process. So we have a special hotline, an 800 number that they can call if there's a problem, that is staffed and answered by people with knowledge of accessibility. And it's all documented, so it's ready to go to court if needed. And it has a special form, because we've even seen people, like these trial attorneys are very smart. There's people that genuinely have disabilities that need fast help, and we're delighted to serve them. Then there's a certain case where 90% of the 3,800 lawsuits last year against agencies were driven by 10 law firms. And those law firms are very good at tripping you up and then demanding money from you. And one of the things we've seen is that they'll put spam words into the request. So it goes into spam, and then they show, oh, a person with a disability had a urgent thing and it never was addressed by you, so pay up $10,000. And the districts pay, and it infuriates us. So we built like a special kind of form too, that like we have to read a lot of spam, but we basically make sure that it doesn't get caught in there either. So basically we just kind of got in the driver's seat on all of that. So that's now just included with your Streamline stuff. And then also your confirmation of things like docs and other stuff. So you go through that as part of your checklist as well. And there's also a new fourth section getting added for vendor notifications. So it'll give you the language to send to your vendors to notify them that they need to adhere to these standards to the extent possible. So there's some really cool things. It tracks your reported issues, even tracks new things that it didn't track before. Like if you embed maps and other stuff, it'll go through and review them all. It now also checks your videos for closed captioning. So we just tried to, like, every way we could think of, protect you from web accessibility issues so you can get to that new 100 score in your dashboard.
And
So with
Matt,
that, I know, oh,
sorry.
we're at time. Go ahead, Melissa.
I just wanted to make clear, so a request that you just showed where somebody's saying there's an issue with the website is different from a remediation request. There's two different requests. So if somebody has a remediation request for a document, they do it through that pop-up window, and you actually get an email from Streamline saying there's been a remediation request for this document for this district, and you can go in and you can see in that tab who's made the request, and then you can then take care of that, either, again, fix it yourself or send it off for remediation and then send the remediated version to the requester when it's available. And then there's what Mac just showed, which is somebody found an issue with the actual website platform. There's something going on there. And they're making that request. And that's why that one goes directly to Streamline, so that they can jump on it and take immediate action on it.
Awesome. Well, with that, I know we're right at time. We want to thank all of our beta testers, and we are working on some new solutions to PDF specifically, and we would love help. So please contact Maria at getstreamline.com if you want to be part of early testing. If you're those power users that was like, hey, I want to get in on the latest stuff. There's two things I want to leave you with. One is that there's a full knowledge base article on PDF remediation. It'll be linked in the slides today. And also, the DOJ small entity implementation guide goes into all the nuts and bolts on archived content, what is, what isn't, and other exceptions like old Excel files and stuff. And it's great. Melissa and I, we want to thank you for coming today. This is a hard topic, but you're here because you're committed to doing the right thing with users with disabilities. And we can't thank you enough. We are here to help because we love solving these hard problems. We love working with districts. And please email either of us directly. We're here to help. We've probably seen the problems that you're facing before. And there is so much great work to be done. I wish we could have answered all the questions. We are keeping chat logs. We'll follow up with folks. But please, if you have a question from today you'd like answered, just email us. We'd be delighted to hear from you. I always get a handful of questions after every session, and we will get the right people involved, whether it's Sean on a document question or Melissa's team of fierce attorneys for legal questions. We're so grateful that you could be here with us today, and we look forward to joining you in 2 more weeks for other upcoming webinars. With that, we'll leave you to get back to the great work you do for your community. Thank you again. And thanks for choosing to join Streamline for today's webinar. See you later.